Good morning, Torbay. This is exciting. We're now live on location from, don't tell Lawrence, but we're in South Devon College. Everything's looking really exciting out there. They're getting everything ready and we're looking forward to welcoming the new students in September. We've had a look. I've got my hand gel, I've got my face mask, but I've got to remember I've got to only do that bit. I've got my own water bottle, I've got my own keyboards, my own phone, and I've got the lovely Emily here supporting us in the background. We haven't had much fun this morning, have we, Em?
No.
Technical gremlins prevail, and of course always waiting to support us, Uncle Jim Parker from the Torbay Weekly, the news editor, the business editor, the newspaper editor, supreme. So this is episode 10. It's been an interesting journey since March, and then our first one in April. It's really good to have people joining us, and today it's all about trying to get ourselves back to business, because as we've just found out today, sometimes it's easier to stay at home and work than it is to come to the office, especially if you're going to rely on tech. But here we are, and it's about getting people confident to come back to work and customers confident to come and do business with you. And the team from Torbay Council be Helen Perkins, Julie Chisnell, Sarah Debois-Kelly, and Candice Sainsbury, plus our special guest, Rehan Uddin from the Bombay Express. We'll be talking to those in a short while. But I do have to thank our sponsors. The Torbay Business Forum could not be producing our events without the support of our sponsors. So thank you to all of those. The Torbay Business Forum, for those that haven't joined, is a group of volunteers. We are here to bring businesses together for the good of Torbay. We bring them socially, professionally, to look at ways that we can help boost the Torbay economy. Now, talking about the Torbay economy, Jim, I always like to come to you. We used to go to you in your kitchen, but now we come to you in the newsroom, and it's deadline day today, isn't it?
So we're having a look at the paper and getting the final pages done. We actually go to press tomorrow morning, but Tuesday's our busiest day, Steve. So we've got lots of stuff to get through today and make sure we get out onto and don't miss that press slot. One thing I'd like to mention this week, a couple of columnists, if you don't mind, and I think safety is the theme of the session today, making sure that people are safe. And there was an interesting piece in the Spectator where the Vicar of Salcombe was falling out with his own mare down there. With the Chelsea invasion, Torbay and the Southamptons is teeming with visitors, which is great at the moment, but the concern is, do they bring the bugs with them? Well, the Vicar was making it clear that there had to be a balance struck, and we need the visitors absolutely to get the economy back to where it was. So interesting down there where the Vicar was supporting what we're all trying to do and get the Bay and the area back on its feet. Little plug for a guest columnist, one Mr. Steve Reynolds this week, who's been writing about resilience, which of course is Torbay. So that's really good. Thanks for meeting your deadline, Steve. You were 2 days late, but never mind. We'll get over that. And again, from a community point of view, we got some really good heartwarming stories. Dads doing skydives for little babies that are struggling. We've got a big focus on green spaces in Torbay, with lots of voluntary groups doing lots of good things for the resort when it comes to making sure we're nice and tidy. There's a plug for Martin Thomas, our culture director, and a big heritage survey they're doing, because we've got lots of historic places that we need to support, not just in the past but in the future. We're announcing a partnership with Emily and Southend College for our business section, which is great, Emily, thank you very much. And we're going to finish on a really high note, which links in with today's theme, really. The 25 Boutique last night won gold at the National Visit England Awards, which is brilliant. The Canary Arms got silver. So it's that sort of theme, Steve, being resilient, celebrating success, and getting Torbay back on its feet where it belongs.
Big congratulations to those award winners as well. Hopefully we might get them onto one of our events coming up soon. They can tell us how they did it. But thanks for that, Jim, and really appreciate the work that you are doing with Torbay Together. And you and I appear on quite a few webinars, don't we, and committees and steering groups. And but one of the ones that we did go on to was the local outbreak engagement board, and that was all about public health, all about being COVID secure. And with that, there's a nice segue into our guests today. And I'd like to bring in Helen Perkins and Julia Chisnell. And therefore, if Emily would like to bring them in for us, because if you remember this guide came out last year, the number of pubs and bars guide. There's a lot of pubs and bars at the moment that are going through it with the help out or eat out to help out, and being perhaps slightly busier than they might want to at times. But Helen and Sarah have got here. I was hoping Helen and Julia, but never mind, you come in whenever you like and enjoy. So, Helen, I'd love to hand over. Please, will you introduce yourself to the nation?
Okay, gosh, what a build up. Okay, I'm Helen Perkins, and I am from Torbay Council, and I manage the food and safety team. So kind of pre-COVID, our team kind of deals with all the sort of commercial sort of food premises, other types of premises. So where the people that, if you've got food businesses, where the people that come out and inspect your food businesses, amongst sort of lots of other things as well. So and Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself, Sarah?
Yeah, I'm Sarah Dubois-Kelly. I'm a senior environmental health officer, and I work in the food and safety team at Torbay Council.
Great. Okay. Well, it's great to have you with us. So over to you. Take it away.
Okay, so I'm just going to start with some of the basics, really. So we get a lot of questions on risk assessment in terms of COVID-19. So I'm going to start with that. I'm sure you have all kind of done risk assessments in the past. You're doing them now. So just some of the questions we've been asked so far, just around, do I need to do a risk assessment for COVID-19? The first answer to that is yes. Every business needs to do a risk assessment for COVID-19. In terms of whether you need to write it down, if you have 5 or more employees, you do need to write it down. But we would encourage you to write it down regardless of the size of your business. The reason for that is basically because when we're the team that deals with kind of the complaints that are coming through, any queries from the public, that sort of thing. So when you have it written down, it does make life a lot easier for you and us, because the first thing we're going to be asking you, if we're on the phone trying to find out what you're doing or visiting you, the first thing we'll be asking for is to have a look at your COVID-19 risk assessment. So if it's on paper, it just means that we can talk through it, what your controls are, what you're doing in your business, and it goes a lot smoother. One of the other questions we've been asked around risk assessment is, do I need to publicise it? If you have over 50 employees, 50 or more employees, you do need to put it onto your website. It doesn't need to be the whole risk assessment, because we've seen some of them and they are pages long for bigger premises. So they can be a slightly condensed version, but it doesn't need to go onto a website. Just in terms of if you're new to business, in terms of assessments, there are some tools to help you. There is something called the Better Business for All toolkit, which is on the Heart of the Southwest Growth Hub. We can give you the links if we haven't already for that. And that is a toolkit that can help you through the risk assessment process. It's really practical. It's got lots of tips and practical advice as to how you do a risk assessment. And it can just help you through that process, and it's got lots of templates you can use. Just in terms of other sort of sources, the Health and Safety Executive's website, hsc.gov.uk, that's another good source of information just around risk assessment. In terms of if you're new to it, you haven't done it before, when you're actually starting the process, the way I start it, if I had to write one, is to blank bit of paper, just kind of thinking about your premises, who's coming in, who's coming out, the flow, what people are doing in the business. Particularly think about not just people, if you're a hotel, not just the guests, think about contractors, any sort of visitors that you might get on an ad hoc basis. For example, we may turn up at your doorstep one day. What are the controls you want us to put in, you know, when we're walking into your business? What would you want us to do in terms of COVID-19? So just think wider, think delivery, maintenance, all those sort of people that are coming through your business. And then just really think about what controls you need to put in place, which Sarah will go through some of that in a minute. But and then trying to sort of look at how you're sort of managing those controls that you're putting in place. Just in terms of the other things just to think about in terms of fire risk assessment. So fire evacuation, obviously you can't social distance if you have a fire evacuation out of your premises. So just think about how you get people out, which is the normal process, but when the meeting places afterwards, your meeting points, how you can socially distance in those areas. So that may need some tweaking on your original fire risk assessments. The other things to think about are first aiders. There may be some additional measures you need to put in place for first aiders, particularly if your original first aiders were a vulnerable group of employees, for example. You just need to think about things like that as well within your risk assessment. One of the main things with risk assessment in terms of if it works well, it's consulting with your staff, and if you're a bigger business and you've got any trade unions, making sure that you're consulting with your trade unions as well. And then the whole process goes a bit smoother, because we see so many risk assessments where they've been written without the staff being engaged, and they don't work as well, because you can write a brilliant risk assessment, but if it doesn't work on the ground in practice, it's not going to work very well. So that would be a plea from me, really, to talk around with your staff group, which I'm sure you're all doing anyway, but it's just a reminder. Again, training, so just really think about your risk assessment and how you train staff in your controls. If you're not open currently or you're just reopening, it's just making sure you're giving the staff the right training and what's expected of them, because it's a whole new world, as we all know. So it's just making them feel comfortable and giving them confidence in their role, because there are lots of new roles within business at the moment. So just think about that as well. And just the last thing on risk assessment, review it regularly. The reasons why, as I'm sure you're aware, guidance is changing daily. I have a job to keep up with it. I'm sure you are too. So it's just keeping abreast of the guidance and re-looking at your risk assessment on a regular basis to make sure that what you put in your risk assessment, you know, last week, the week before, is still current. And we're trying to send out as much information as we can on changes to guidance. If you're on our email database, we are sending out lots of information on when the guidance is updated and things like that. One of the best sites for the guidance is .gov.uk site, where it contains all the guidance for all types of industry, from offices to beauty salons and lots of other things as well. So that's our go-to site as well. Next slide, please. Just in terms of communication, again, vital. We are, when we deal with the complaints from the members of the public, one thing they say to us is that I'm not sure of confidence in going back into the businesses. So really the best way to try and get over that is to try and give as much information to the customer before they arrive in your business. So as an example, if you were a hotel, trying to get as much information onto your website, so people are prepared for what controls are in place in your business, and really just trying to promote those. And also, you know, vice versa, what you're expecting from them as well, just in terms of what information you'll be gathering from them. Okay, in terms of contracts, there is something to think about there, just in terms of, for example, if you were a business and you had somebody that had to stay in the hotel for example, they couldn't go home for some reason, just thinking about your own contracts in terms of, you know, payment and things like that, really, is, you know, obviously you wouldn't be able to pay them or pay for their rooms. So it's just making sure that's in black and white in your contract side. And trading standards, we can give you some contacts if you need that, or you can contact me. I can put you in touch with trading standards who can give you some additional help on things like contracts. In terms of track and trace, that is vital for us. It's really important. We just sent out a message last week to lots of businesses, particularly in the licensed trade, to just remind people that we really need people to gather the information of who's coming in and who's coming out of the premises. In terms of, depending on what premises you've got, there are lots, there's no right or wrong, as long as you get the information. So there's lots of different systems being used. There are, just think about the clients you've got before you sort of put a system in place. In terms of Digital, a lot of people are using digital, taking the information as they're coming in, or beforehand, ideally on booking systems. That's the best way. Just think about if you've got an elderly clientele, although lots of people are silver surfers, I appreciate that, but in terms of if you just have digital, you need another system as well, potentially, to help people that aren't on the websites and things like that. In terms of data protection, that is really important. So you have to keep the records, ideally name, address, telephone number, and if you're a group, so if you have a group come into your business, it only needs to be the details of that group leader. It doesn't necessarily have to be 8 people in that group, as long as we can contact that group leader. Just in terms of how long you have to keep the records, it's 21 days, and that includes staff rotas. And just when you're keeping it, obviously try and keep it, it's very secure, because there are data protection regulations, as I'm sure you're all aware. In a lot of business I've seen, they've designated one person to deal with the data protection issues for track and trace, and that seems to work quite well, because then that person is completely responsible for holding that data after the 21 days, getting rid of it securely, and it just seems to work quite well. So that's the sort of suggestion from me really on that side of things. Okay, I think that's it for me, and over to Sarah.
So the main risk of transmission from coronavirus is through aerosol droplets. So I'm going to be talking about how you can control that. It's important to point out that people with COVID-19 are infectious for up to 2 days before their symptoms even begin. And some people are asymptomatic, so they'll have the virus, but they won't actually be displaying any symptoms. So the key controls for managing the risk are social distancing, cleaning and hand hygiene. Social distancing, it's become a bit of a grey area, but this 2-metre social distancing rule still applies. And if it's not possible in your workplace, then you need to be implementing what's known as risk mitigation factors. You're trying to reduce the proximity and the duration of contact between people. So just thinking very generally, say in an office space, you need to be thinking about avoiding queues. So could you stagger the start and finish time of the workforce? Think about where staff congregate, in the kitchen, around the water cooler, in the toilet. How can you limit congregations in those areas? So it might be that you limit numbers in those areas, or you put in place one-way systems through the workplace. And then think about protective screens in reception areas and service points, back-to-back or side-to-side working, and then working in fixed teams or bubbles. And that's so if there was an outbreak associated with your premises, you wouldn't lose your whole workforce, you might only lose a team or a bubble. And think about contactless payment systems as well. In terms of cleaning, I will be talking about this in a bit more detail in a minute, but you need to be implementing an enhanced version of your current normal day-to-day cleaning. This needs to be a gold-plated standard of cleaning. It's an increased frequency. And then hand hygiene. So you may think you're teaching your granny to suck eggs, but this is so important. Make sure you've got all the appropriate facilities, well done Steve, in place for hand washing. So it's cleaning your hands for 20 seconds. Have you got plenty of soap? Have you got hot water supply? Have you got hand drying facilities, ideally something like paper towel? And then have you got hand sanitizer at certain points within the premises? So it might be at your entrance and exit points. And are those supplies plentiful? Have you got a plentiful supply so that when you run out, it's being topped up? And are checks being made to ensure that those supplies have been topped up throughout the day? And encouraging staff and customers and visitors to your premises to wash their hands, maybe using signage, something like that. And then PPE, so personal protective equipment. So again, this is a bit of a grey area, but PPE is not currently recognised as a mitigating factor in the control of coronavirus. So face covering are not PPE. A face covering could only be considered PPE if it was a medical grade mask and worn in the correct way, so fully covering the nose and the mouth. It's now compulsory for visitors and customers to wear face coverings in quite a range of enclosed spaces. It doesn't necessarily extend to staff. You have to check on the government website for your working safely documents to see if face coverings were required in your particular business sector. And you might find that staff want to wear face coverings. And again, as Helen said, communication is key, making sure you're consulting with your staff and also including that in your risk assessment. So our departments received quite a lot of inquiries from the public in recent weeks, and they've been concerned going into premises that they're wearing face coverings but staff aren't. So think about public perception and also customer confidence. Next slide, please. And cleaning. So the focus is on hand contact points. So thinking about handrails, light switches, door handles, they all need to be cleaned frequently throughout the day. Do your cleaners need to be wearing PPE? And by that we mean things like disposable gloves and aprons. You should already have regard for COSH, so the control of substances hazardous to health. So you should already, if you're using particular chemicals, they might need to wear PPE anyway. But in the case of managing the risk of coronavirus, should they be wearing, disposable gloves and aprons? And when you are cleaning, it needs to be well ventilated, so keeping windows and doors open before and during cleaning. And you may have heard of British standards being bandied around in terms of cleaning chemicals. So some chemicals are tested against a range of viruses or bacteria, and then they get assigned a British standard to show that they've been accredited and tested against those viruses. So in terms of coronavirus, there's virucidal cleaners that have got a mark called BSEN 14476. They've been tested against, or been shown to be effective against coronavirus. But if you aren't using a cleaner with that BSEN number, you could also use sodium hypochlorite, which is essentially bleach. So domestic bleach has got about 5% sodium hypochlorite, and you only need a really weak bleach solution. So 21 mils of bleach in 0.98 litres of water would be a weak bleach solution, and that would be effective for cleaning your premises. If you are a food business, we would still encourage you to use sanitizers in your kitchen, and to carry out two-stage cleaning, which food businesses should know about, and continue to use your sanitizers, which are accredited against their BSEN 1276 and 13697. And that's all from me. Thank you.
It's interesting. Could you briefly explain what two-stage cleaning is?
Two-stage cleaning. So in a food business, you want to be using a sanitizer, which is going to be killing or reducing the numbers of bacteria in the food business. So two-stage cleaning is initially using a degreaser, so you're removing any surface debris and grease from the premises, from the food surfaces, and then using your sanitizer, which will then kill the bacteria. If the surface is greasy, then the sanitizer isn't effective. So that's why it's two-stage cleaning. So removing the grease and the debris and then using your sanitizer. And usually with sanitizers, you have to leave them on for a period of time to be effective. So some sanitizers, it's 30 seconds, and some it could be a minute or a couple of minutes.
Wow, there's a real science to this. It's almost like going to Jim's kitchen to work out how much bleach to how much water, Jim, isn't it?
Don't come to my kitchen, for Christ's sake. No, don't. Oh, give me some plenty of warning, please. My kitchen, my wife is listening. My kitchen is spotless, by the way. Just one question that I've got. I like Steve, I run a sports club. All this refers to sports clubs as well, doesn't it? In particular, those with bars, I would say, yeah.
Yeah, that applies to every premises, really. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just if you need if you need specific guidance, just the working safely guidance splits into all the different sectors. So just if you need to be doubly sure, just go into your specific sector guidance, which is on the .gov site.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
thanks.
great, thank you. And just before we bring in Rehan in one moment, just a reminder to the people that are on the webinar today, you can write in with your questions. I've got one from Julie Rose at the moment. We'll come to that in the Q&A session, but we're going to hear a case study now. Rehan, how have you managed to cope with the current situation and keep your business going?
It's been a system of adaptation, really. Like Helen's just mentioned, the guidelines change all the time, and we're always having to maneuver ourselves into a position where we meet those guidelines. So it's been quite interesting, really. In terms of what I am here to talk about today, which is I am the case study here today to talk to the great Torbay public about Bombay Express and what we've done during the time of COVID-19. Look, my name's Rahanuddin. I'm from Bombay Express. I'm the head chef and owner. I run the Asian Restaurant Owners Network with over 1,900 restaurants across the UK. Typically, you'd expect somebody of this background to be from Bradford or Birmingham, but honestly, I'm born and raised in Torquay. So I'm going to be talking through the first things I did and give you a little highlight reel of what I've been through as a restaurateur, and sort of take you through those processes. So look, the first thing that happened, lockdown came in. My first port of call was to shut down completely. We didn't know the parameters. We didn't know the government guidelines. The government didn't even know what they were going to put out. So we had to really take a step back. We shut down for 2 weeks, and then we sought out ideas and methods to really choose what was going to be the safest practical way. Now, takeaway was given the green light to still operate during lockdown. Restaurants wasn't. So we knew that was the way to go. We set up the restaurant protocol and made sure that our establishment was safe. So it was akin to opening up a new establishment. We had to start from scratch and really look at how we were going to develop a new product, a new way of serving people, especially when you're delivering food and there's no contact involved. How do you do it? What's going to be the most hygienic way to do it? And how are we going to move forward? So look, being closed for two weeks meant we could actually push through to discover those things. So ideas, plans, protocol, guidelines, safety, everything had to be correct. One wrong mistake and your business was done, because there was only a few businesses that stayed open. So the spotlight, especially with Torbay Help Hub and things of that nature, was literally on a few businesses. And we know that from Prentice Butchers, Fish for All, and we saw all the adverts that came out. I'm sure everybody saw those things on Torbay Help Hub as well. So we came up with a Bombay box. It was a 9-inch pizza box that contained a variety meal with many things, plus a drink for £10. It met isolation criteria. So if you were self-isolating or you were socially distancing, it was a great way for doing that and not having to share. Everybody loves sharing a little bit of everything when they get a takeaway, but this was just for you. And that's kind of what we set our precedent up with the marketing, that this is a great way for you not to have anybody tampering or dealing with your food. So it became a tamper-proof way of actually eating. And our delivery drivers, in the ways that they were delivering the food, were custom built. So the customer was telling us how they wanted their food delivered specifically. And we were meeting those criteria as well. The box was a huge success. We went on to work with a new program that we created, which was called Bombay Key 20, where we fed 20 key workers a day throughout lockdown. The great thing about that was not only were we doing a great thing, and we were also feeding the vulnerable in the local area with our GoFundMe page, we were actually getting tidbits and snippets of information from the local community as to what they were doing in terms of health and safety. And because the guidelines at that point hadn't been really set for the hospitality sector as a whole, it meant that we were actually working with each other and gauging different things. So I'll give you one example. Telephones, when you're speaking on the phone, obviously it's very close to your mouth. Proximity there, super close. Masks hadn't even being looked at as a possibility of being worn. The scientific advice was they don't really do a lot. So one of the care workers has said they'd just stopped using phones in the normal way and just moved on to speakerphone only. And I thought that was just a very logical, smart move that we just hadn't taken into account. And it was those little tidbits of information that actually built up our ways of building our risk assessment and looking at different ways that we could improve. Our approach was a simple one. When we reopened the restaurant, myself and my dad being from the same household meant that only us being in the kitchen meant there was no need to socially distance between one another. And that's really what gave us the platform to do as much as we were able to do. And keeping out other members of staff, and as the furlough scheme came on, that allowed them to actually be okay financially, which was great news. And we were allowed to proceed. We only opened for 4 days, Thursday to Sunday. That still remains today, which is phenomenal for any business to be able to open pretty much just over half the week, which is unheard of, I think, in the Asian sector specifically. We opened from 4 to 9. This allowed us to get a full day on Monday for an essential deep clean. So it meant for the 4 days that we were open, we were doing our daily cleaning methods, we were having everything done. But on Monday, it meant we could come in our own time, take our time and be really methodical and clinical with the cleaning from front to back. You're always under pressure as a restaurant with cleaning. So as you're open, you're trying to get things done, you're trying to get things in. But with us having 3 days out of the circuit, it meant we could dedicate Monday to that. Tuesday, our supplier turns up from Bristol with our spices and things of that nature. So we had a discussion with them about how we wanted them to come into the place and what they can and cannot do, which is really, really important. And it meant no staff were on site when they arrived, only myself, which mitigated the circumstances. When click and collect came in and it became available, we had time slots. Unfortunately for us, our tech company who deals with our EPOS system, which is our computerized ordering system, put in time slots as well, so customers could select the time slot so they never clashed on when they were collecting food. We still had to make sure there was a 2-meter distance from the front of house and the servers when the customers were collecting food. And Deliveroo provided us with the guardrails, sanitizers. We spoke to Edmondson Electrical in the local area, picked up a load of N95 masks, and we also picked up the floor stickers from there and huge A1 signs letting customers know what was expected of them. The decision not to open the restaurant when we were allowed to, I think that was July the 4th, was pretty much an easy one. Financially, we were secure. Takeaways still going very, very strong. And I was looking at post-September. Traditionally, Torbay goes a little bit quieter off into the winter. And with cold and flu season coming in, we looked at all the parameters and sort of said, we'll stick with that. We'll revisit in April and sort of see where we are. So for us, that was how we looked at it in that respect. But just before lockdown, the Asian Restaurant Owners Network, the TDA, and the Environmental Health Department held 4 workshops for the Asian hospitality sector here in Torbay. We honed in on e-commerce was one of the weeks, and that proved to be really, really important. With owners not being familiar with online ordering, it allowed them to get a head start. Not that they knew they were getting a head start, but they got a head start just before the pandemic kicked in, and it allowed them to get ahead of where they needed to be. I've worked closely with the Environmental Health Department over the years, helping to bridge the gap with the Asian hospitality sector here in Torbay. And not only are we trying to bring them into the modern age, we've also brought in higher standards for the sector, and we've demanded it from within. Throughout lockdown, I started my own live TV show for the Asian Restaurant Owners Network Facebook page. It was called Welcome to the New World. It allowed me to speak to restaurateurs from across the UK and bring them in live on the screen from across the country. The topics we discussed ranged from mental health to shorter menus during the COVID-19. Having the ability to hear and share ideas and experiences allowed me to keep on top of everything that was to come. And when you're responsible for 1,900 restaurants and people are looking to you for the answers, clearly of which I did not have, it became the only way to actually get a general consensus was by talking to each other, creating areas where people could have those discussions in the first place, and then coming to common consensus of 10 people in a small kitchen does not work. You're going to need to reduce the menu down, get the workflow of the kitchen right, and actually get that to a safe level. And restaurants listened. It really did change a lot of their outlooks. The emails from the council and the EHO and English Riviera BID's video conferences were really vital in what we were doing. Sharing issues and confronting them allowed myself and other businesses in the Bay to use the correct protocol to achieve a safe working environment that worked for the business, but most importantly, the community. I'm working with the global combi oven creators and brand Rationale at the moment, and we're working to create kitchen optimization for a more modern day approach to a eco-conscious, timed and digital monitored kitchen. It's very simple to just place a USB into your combi oven, pull out all of the data, hand it over to you guys at EHO, and you can simply check all of our cooking methods. So it becomes quite automated in that way and makes everybody's life factual and a lot easier, I feel, as well. I feel there's much more work left to do, and the next part of my journey involves bringing the restaurant dining experience to the home, inclusive of the cooking and serving in a socially distant manner, which sounds impossible, but we've got some great ideas in the pipeline, so watch out for those. With more changes to come, I expect more to adapt to, but with the support mechanisms available locally and online, we've got the best chance at keeping everybody ready and safe. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. A smart combi oven. The Internet of Things is upon us in the kitchen. So that's a great, and it just, you talk about sharing knowledge and bringing the network together and everybody having different ideas and then reaching a consensus and working obviously with the authorities to make sure that we are safe. That sounds fantastic, and it's great to know that you're homegrown, because we only in Torbay, that is great. And Torbay being a pioneer, it's really good to hear that. So we do have a question that's come in from Julie Rose, and it says, I've been to 2 premises in Torbay over the weekend which use wooden tables which have not been cleaned between customers being seated thereon. Surely this is not correct protocol. This was for outside seating. So how should establishments be controlling those outside seating areas and coping with wooden seating? Anybody?
I can answer that one. Yeah, it's very difficult. What we would be looking for is they should be cleaned regularly, frequently in between customers. That is quite difficult, I appreciate. But what we suggest is that there is somebody kind of roving around as well, making sure that that is done regularly outside, because the outside bit is often forgotten. So it's making sure there's enough staff outside of the premises as well as inside to make sure that those cleaning regimes are in place and they're properly, controlled, really. But it is quite a tricky one, particularly when you're busy. So yeah, but they should be cleaned.
and certainly visiting the occasional establishment purely for research purposes, of course, you do notice a difference. Some are really greeting you at the door and making sure you get to the right table, ensuring that you have a QR code to pick up your menu. To those that are really just not really controlling it, there's a clipboard at the entrance hoping that somebody might write their name on it. How is this all going to be controlled and policed? Or is it just a case of people will vote with their feet and not fraternize those establishments?
Okay, so there's a couple I can answer that one again. There's a couple of things really. In terms of the general kind of overall risk assessment side, that falls to us as a local authority, so environmental health. In terms of the legislation that we would be acting under, obviously we hope people are doing it voluntarily. Enforcement is the last resort, but we have got those powers if we need it. It's basically under the Health and Safety at Work Act for risk assessment. So if people weren't controlling the risks properly, there are various mechanisms that can be undertaken formal improvement notices, sort of on from there really, and they are sort of criminal bits of legislation, so we really don't want to go down that route if we have to, and we are trying all sorts of ways to do that as well, to make sure that people are complying. We're currently working on a reactive basis, so we are obviously getting complaints in, queries, whatever. Our team is reacting to all of those quite quickly, so it's done by intelligence. So and premises that aren't, for example, doing track and trace, we are either ringing them up or visiting them. Our licensing team are also doing that currently, and we're also sending information out to those specific premises where it's not currently being done very well. So yeah, there's a whole kind of range.
And one more question, because time is pushing on, but a hotelier was complaining to me that he had done everything in his hotel possible, use of PPE, staff training, risk assessments, but customers turning up last minute, booking.com type of situation, didn't know who was coming, they just sort of rock up and there they are, then refusing to wear a mask, saying, no, I'm on holiday, I do that at home, I don't do that while I'm on holiday. What can a person do in that circumstance? I mean, it might happen for Rehan and his restaurant, but if somebody refuses to do this?
I think the first step is to explain why they need to do it, and really to try and talk to them, have a conversation, which I'm sure you're trying to do anyway as businesses, but trying to get them to understand how important it is, just in terms of, you know, the risks to the business, the risks to themselves and to the Bay as a whole, really. So I think having those conversations, in terms of the question we've been asked is, can we go in and require people to wear masks? No, we can't. The enforcement doesn't sit with us as a local authority. So the answer is no on that one. We can advise and, you know, put people in the right direction for the guidance and that sort of thing. In terms of the other question we've had, if customers are particularly aggressive, they're really not wanting to, as a business, you are going to have to deal with that as any other, you know, security issue, in terms of if it's getting heated, follow your normal procedures for, you know, do you need to ask people to leave if they you know, putting everybody else at risk really by getting particularly aggressive and that sort of thing, really. So a difficult one. Yeah,
very difficult. Well, thank you for answering that. Now, I thank the three of you. Thank you very much for so far. Now, in the wings we have Julia Chisnell and Candy Sainsbury, who are going to come on to the next section, as I realise we're 9:15, and there's just you and me, Jim. There we are. So, oh, there's Julia. Hi, Julia. Just make sure we got on mute at the moment, Julia. I think we might be on mute.
Candice is having internet problems. She sent me a message, so she's wobbling at the moment.
Okay, well, she can hopefully wobble in or out, and if she can get in, then great. Otherwise, over to you, Julia. The floor is yours.
Okay, lovely, thank you. That was just such a brilliant explanation of what you can do to prevent needing what I'm going to talk to you about next. So I'm from Public Health in Torbay Council, consultant in Public Health. It's lovely to be here again. I'm looking at what you do if you get a possible case or a confirmed case, or even more than one case. So you've done all those things which really maximise the likelihood of you not getting them, or if you do get someone, being able to deal with it really, really quickly. So if we flick on the slides, thank you. This first one, if you keep clicking down for the text, lovely. This is first couple of slides are just some definitions to remind you what I'm sure you know, which is the definitions that we're all working to. So a case of COVID-19 is either someone with a suspected case is someone with symptoms which could be a fever or high temperature, the new continuous cough and a loss of or change to sense of taste or smell, or someone who's tested positive. So some people don't have symptoms, as you know, but they do have a positive test result. So either of those two are what we worry about. And if you do have a case of COVID, you now have to isolate not for 7 days, but for 10 days. So moving on to the next one. Emily. Thanks. A contact, there's a couple of different definitions, but all really important. It might be someone who's in your household, who you live with and share facilities with, like kitchens, bathrooms, so on. That's counted as a household contact. A definition of someone who's sort of outside your household, but still important in terms of transmission of COVID is a direct close contact. So that's face-to-face contact with somebody within a metre for any length of time. So it could be a really short encounter, a conversation or something, or being coughed on, or touching somebody, or somebody who's in your bubble. So school children in a bubble at school, or workers in your bubble in your workplace. Sarah before was saying, if you work in teams or bubbles, that keeps you segregated, and so people in your team or bubble are counted as close contacts. And an extended close contact is further away, but still within 2 metres, and that's for more than 15 minutes. So that's, say you travel with someone in a car, and one of the key bits of guidance is trying not to share lifts and car journeys with people. A lot of workers going to the same place, we've always said, please share a car. It's much more green, it makes sense, and it's, if you don't have one, it's great to go with someone else. But at the moment, trying to limit that as much as possible, because it's really, you know, being in a small car is a risk situation, and there are mitigations you can put in place to make it safer, but the less you can do of that, the better it is. Click once more, Emily. Just to say that you're still a contact. This was mentioned by Helen and Sarah too. You're still counted as a contact if you wear face covering. It's a precautionary measure, and it helps from sort of spitting on or coughing on somebody else, but it doesn't mean that you are not a contact just because you wore a face covering. And when you get to being a contact of someone who's got COVID, you have to isolate for 14 days still. That's still the amount of time, because during that 14 days, you could be incubating infection. Okay, next one, please. Now, these are 3 little flowcharts showing you, you got this one fast, you got this one quicker than me. So these are 3 flowcharts showing you what to do if you get someone. This first one is someone with possible symptoms. So it might be a customer or a staff member or someone else in your workplace. You don't have to call Public Health England straight away if it's only someone with symptoms, but if you have any worries, you're not sure how to deal with it, then they're very happy to take a call and explain, as are we at the council. What you tell the person to do is go home, isolate for 10 days and get a test. Everyone in their household needs to isolate until they have a test result. So go home, get test and wait. Now, test results are coming back quite quickly. So if you get one, say, in Livington Road in Torquay, or get one delivered to you, they've been getting quicker and quicker, and you should get it back within 24 hours. And the ways to book a test are using that online link or calling 119. Where the person's been in your workplace, you clean and disinfect. All the guidance that Sarah gave earlier on around cleaning, all that applies here. And there was a new bit of guidance came in a few weeks ago, which said, although other people in the workplace who are contacts don't need to isolate until you have a positive test, you might want to confidentially let them know that they have been in contact, so that they can be aware and sort of be aware of looking for any symptoms themselves, and just taking extra care until the original person gets their result. So if it's negative, everyone's fine, everyone can go back to work and stop isolating as long as they're well. If it's positive, then you follow the procedure on the next slide. And I just had a few little sort of feedback from other areas. We've had places that you may have heard of, mostly outside Torbay, where people have had a possible case and sort of run ahead of themselves and thought, oh, help, quite right, I must close down. Or, you know, when they haven't even got their test result and they don't yet know whether it can be quite easily limited and dealt with. So do all that you need to do, but don't run ahead, and don't, you know, communicate to who you have to communicate to, but don't sort of get ahead of yourself. And there was one other thing, but I've lost it. It's gone now.
So don't panic. Don't panic.
I know, it's on. I've forgotten what's on the last slide now. If you've got a confirmed case, you can click through. Emily, thanks. If you've got a confirmed case, definitely talk to Public Health England, contact us. There's something important here, which is that if they weren't in your setting in the 2 days before they got symptoms, then you don't have any further action. So if they were fine on Friday and on Saturday and on Sunday, I mean, if they were in your workplace on Friday and they were fine on Saturday and Sunday, and they didn't come to work Monday, but they got ill on Monday, you don't need to do anything, because you've got 2 clear days. So that's a really important thing to remember. It's always really important to get from them what time they became ill and when they were last working with you. So no action if they weren't in your setting. If they were in your setting, talk to Public Health England about what you do, but it's all the usual things. So it's isolating anyone who's decided to be a close contact, doing the cleaning, and communicating clearly with everybody. So click down the rest of the slide. Thanks, Emily. Make sure anyone else who gets symptoms gets a test quickly and isolates, and everyone can come back at the end of the isolation periods. All the things we were talking about earlier, the preparation, if you've done all your track and trace records and keeping people distant as far as possible, you can really limit the impact on your business. So if one person got ill or tested positive, if they've only been in contact with a limited number of others, you don't have to close down as long as you've got enough to keep running the shop. So, you know, the preparation is everything here. And also, not everyone who you might think is a close contact. You know, it's people in your, if you're a customer, it's people you're sitting with. If you're in a restaurant, it's people you're dining with. You know, it's not everybody in the whole place. So it's really important to make sure you've got your distancing in place and to make sort of records of where people are. And we said about using social media with care. It's a bit like the other slide, really. Sometimes things get out of hand, and they get people start to worry because they think there's an outbreak when there isn't one. So be really careful. Do tell people what they need to do, but don't get ahead of yourselves, and don't start thinking, help, it's an outbreak, I need to close and I need to tell everybody. Do what Public Health England advise. Public Health England have template letters and formats for telling people what they need to know, so they can help you communicate with other staff, customers, and anyone you come in contact with. They can tell you what to say in the best way that gives people the right information and doesn't worry them. Last slide, please, on these, Emily. So click down a bit, thank you. If you've got several cases or more than 2 or more, that is technically called an outbreak, unless it was 2 people in the same family. So this is where it suggests that there was spread within the place itself. So this is where Public Health England will give you more support, and they might call an outbreak control team where they work with you and us and other partners to go through everything you need to do. If it's really small and limited, it's not much different to the previous slide. If it's quite a few people and it looks like it was spread around within your setting, then it's just more complicated, and you might need to close down for a short time to clean or something. Again, all the guidance is the same. Individual isolates 10 days, contacts isolate 14 days, and you do your cleaning. Keep clicking down, thank you, Emily. And if you need any support, like if there's media interest, or you don't know how to communicate with staff or visitors or clients or customers, there's loads of support to help you. Public Health England and us at the local authority, we can all help you with that. And it's not, some people think that keeping your track and trace records means that you need to go and contact everybody. It shouldn't mean that. What it does mean is you've got them ready, so if there is a possible outbreak, Public Health England can make contact with them and find out if they are a contact and tell them what they need to do. So you shouldn't need to be following them up. It would be Public Health England or us that do that. And this is a little reminder that you sometimes think about the open spaces, or you think about the places where the public are, and you're coming into contact with them, and you're really good about keeping your distance, and then staff might walk frequently down a really narrow corridor, or they sit and have their coffee, or they go out and have their cigarette, and they do that without distancing and without any other precautions. And those are the places where we found that outbreaks have spread. So in other parts of the country, it's been, say, businesses where the staff have travelled to work together in the same cars, they've had their coffee breaks together, maybe they live in the same houses, and often the transmissions happen there rather than in the workplace itself. And sort of last reassuring message is we are all used to doing this. It hasn't been COVID-19, but it's been other infectious diseases, and we know what to do. We can support you through it, so don't worry. The important thing is talking to someone early, getting advice and help, and following just the simple measures around testing, isolating, cleaning, and communications. So give us a call if you have any worries at all. I think the next questions.
Julia, that's brilliant. Oh, right to time as well. And I do have a couple of questions that have come in. One from James Sanders. Do we know if there has been an increase in the R number within Torbay following the relaxation of lockdowns?
No, we're about at the national, well, the southwest. We haven't measured it. We don't have it measured at local level. So we've got a southwest number, which the last time I saw it was about 0.8 to 1 or 0.8, 0.9, and it was the same as nationally. To be honest, we had thought there might be a bit of an impact of the relaxation and increase in tourism, and we've only had very few cases notified over the last month. So it's really good. I mean, this is a really positive thing. Southwest as a whole is fairly low. Torbay in recent weeks was the second lowest place in the country, although you can't be complacent, and any little, you know, any small instance of infection can spread really quickly, as we've seen in other places. So we complete vigilance always, but our numbers are still low at the moment.
Yeah, well, that is good to hear. There is a Devon County Council, there is a dashboard which you can go online, and it does show that I think there was how many cases, incidences, deaths in recent weeks, and I think we're pretty lucky that there hasn't been a case since, is it 28th of June, is that right?
Yeah, if you go into Torbay Council, we've got our data on the website too in detail. So if you go Torbay Council latest figures or Torbay Council coronavirus figures, and Google that, it will jump up. And yeah, the last, sadly, our last death was on the 2nd of June. So we've had sort of a couple of cases a week, say, since then.
So I think it does go to show that we're obviously doing things right, we're doing things well, and we have had the increased numbers through the tourists arriving, which we desperately need for our businesses to be able to survive and get us through the next winter. It really is the key messages here. If we prepare well and follow the guidance, we know about social distance, that SD factor is just coming into everybody now, I think, in everything we do. And more hand gel and yes, all the things you can possibly bring in. I've had another question come in, Pete Blackler. Brilliant, informative presentations, thank you. Pleased to hear we don't need to take any hydrochloroquine or inject bleach. Well, thank you, Pete. Wasn't a question.
That's really good, that, yes.
It's from the Trump school of dealing with things. So yeah, but it's really difficult because people are trying to get back and get on with things, and when you get busy, it's easier to slip, isn't it? So it's about embedding the protocols.
We're trying to balance reassurance with vigilance. It's the simple things that make the difference, the distancing and the washing, and we want to be confident and encourage people to come and visit and be about their normal lives, but just be watchful, careful and sensible, really.
Yeah.
And we'll get through.
And just one more question from David Rowe. I think this is a bit of a recap on the GDPR question about when leaving contact details. How does this tie in with GDPR? So you take a phone number and a name from one of the group. How long are you supposed to keep that for?
You keep it for 21 days.
Yeah. Okay.
And you obviously treat it very confidentially, so you do make sure that you don't share details anywhere and you keep them safe, and then you destroy them in 21 days.
Yeah.
Steve, just one quick question I've had given to me, Julia. If you test positive, you isolate for 10 days, but if you're a contact, you isolate for 14 days. Is that right? And why is the difference?
The reason is 10 days is, well, it was originally 7 and now 10 is how long they think the infection can hang about in you. So it takes you that long to get rid of the infection from when you started it. The 14 days is because that's the incubation period. And the longest it's been known is it takes 2 weeks for you to develop infection after being in contact with someone with it. So they're different things. How long it takes for you to get rid of it when you've got it, and how long it takes to develop it if you've been in contact with someone with it.
Terrific, thank you.
Right. Okay, well, we're going to bring the rest of our panel back now, and apologies to Bernice if she wasn't able to get on there. I have had one question that came in to me by email from Alan Archer. Now, this is probably not for our panel here, but I have posed it to the TDA. So is anyone aware of any government grants or incentive that would help businesses purchase equipment, not PPE, that would help the businesses reduce the risk of spreading COVID-19 virus and other airborne hazardous particles in real time? I think this is a bit of a plug for the alert project, so watch this space from Alan, because I know that he's his asbestos alert is is underway. So really it's a case of, is there any grant funding available for anybody manufacturing equipment that's going to help us in this kind of environment? I don't know whether you ladies would have come across any of that, or
Not
no?
something I know.
No. Okay, well,
Not that
Carl
I know of,
Wyatt,
but
no?
definitely the best people to be asking about that, Steve.
Yep. Well, bless him, Carl Wyard of TDA has come back saying the government has announced a grant fund for SMEs, which will be administered through the Growth Hub. We're not sure on the amount yet, but because the fund hasn't been launched. So the idea there, Alan, if you're listening, get onto the Growth Hub. Anybody else, join on to the Growth Hub, which will give all help, support, advice for businesses in this and any other matter that affects us. I wanted to give a quick plug to Nick Williams in terms of help for businesses. The EPIC, our wonderful new building on the end of Long Road there, promoting free to business seminars from covering a range of digital skills. So we were tuning our digital skills today and trying to get connectivity. So I think we've done it right so far. We've lasted to the end. I don't have any more questions. There was a call for case studies, and Robin Weston of Cabinet Office at UK Gov is looking for case studies of offices returning to work. So if we get any professionals on looking at making your offices COVID secure, and you say, right, well, we've done this. I mean, I'm sat in the college and there's signs and there's green ticks on desks where you're allowed to sit and where you're not to sit, all this kind of thing, getting ready for the proper return to work. So any case studies, please do contact Becky Davies at TDA, and maybe we could showcase what we're doing in the Bay and spread the word. Well, I want to thank our panelists today. Really great to put you on the spot, and the feedback has been superb. You know, brilliant, informative presentations. What more could you ask? And Becky's just said thanks for the plug, so that's good. It's a real live time here. I know we're a little while over time. I want to thank you all. I want to thank our sponsors today, South Devon College, and of course Gallagher's, our insurance risk management and consultancy, as was known as Pavies before. I want to thank you all for your support. I wish you all every success in what you're doing. And Jim, great to see the paper this week. Still getting questions from people. How do I get the paper? What's circulation like at the moment?
Very good. So very quickly, Steve, we promised to deliver 15,000 copies direct to selected postcodes, and that is still the case. We're growing, but you can pick up a copy of the paper, if not delivered directly, at an outlet at less than a 10-minute walk from where you live. And we're now delivering 23,000 copies a week. So if you have an issue and you can't get one, just give me a shout, drop me an email, and we'll sort it out. No problem at all.
Super, that's great. And there's also the online version, which is very good. It reads very well on a tablet or iPad or whatever.
Yeah, again, if you go onto the website, you can sign up, and we've got 1,000 people signed up for that electronic version, which is brilliant as well.
Okay, well, thank you all. I'll bring it to a close today. We're a little bit over time, but we had loads of content to get through, and there's more, isn't there? There's Julia, Helen, Sarah, you got loads more. And thank you, Rehan, for the work that you're doing. And I love the Aron logo there. That looks like, yeah, really, that's a superb initiative. And as Jim would say, only in Torbay. So thank you all. Thank you for our delegates. Oh, Wellswood Co-op have the Torbay Weekly. There's another plug. Here we are. This is getting quite, this is getting good, isn't it? If we can keep going all day. But I'm going to close it now, and I say thank you all, and thank you to all our delegates for tuning in today and listening. We'll see you in September. Bye for now.
Thanks. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.